Here is an expanded tutorial on antenna cable kit installation, including crimping the PL259 connector to the end of the RG58 cable on the end of the antenna kit. So, first things first, let's look at some of the components of the kit. We've got our fender bracket, right? 90 degrees, pretty straightforward. Best way to deal with this, say this is the fender of your pickup, and on this side is the hood. You would put this on here like so, make some scribing marks or Sharpie marks to template the holes you'll have to drill some holes, do some screws for the install. Anyway, just real quick, wanted to go over that. The next thing you're going to want to do once this is mounted, and you can probably do this before you actually mount the antenna. You just want to make sure that you have the cable routed in the direction you want it to go. This is your antenna cable kit. This is the end that goes in the mount, and this is the end that you would feed through the firewall of your vehicle. You'll want to run this down along the cowl and to however you're going to get from the firewall of the outside of the vehicle into the inner part of the cab and up to the radio mounting location. Only after you've gone and routed all of this cable through where you want it to go do you want to trim it and mount the PL259 connector to it. So just wanted to go over a couple of quick points with the cable install on the bracket. So you can see here there's a couple of little small detents in the bottom part of this antenna fitting that fit into this bracket. So you want to make sure you got a little bit of play, but not much. You want to make sure it's not in there cockeyed like so. You want to make sure it's kind of locked in there. Included in that is this antenna nut, or this base nut. I guess it's the base nut. This is the base nut. So you want to make sure that this O-ring is installed properly. There's a divot in the middle of this on the bottom side of this base nut. So you want to make sure you get it on there good. Don't cross thread. Got to be careful not to cross thread. There's a couple of flats on here that you can see that allow you to use an adjustable wrench to really reef down and tighten down on this thing. And again, you want to get this on there kind of tight. Tighten this thing down to where the O-ring kind of starts to grab, and then you can rotate it if you need to rotate it, orientate it however you want. Kind of got to make sure it's loose enough to do. But I like to go out, if this is the front of the vehicle and that's the windshield side, I like to run it back towards the windshield and kind of have it in there like that. And then you'll just use an adjustable wrench to crank down on that fitting, or on that nut. That guy's locked in. Then you can install the antenna. The antenna comes with its own nut, and your color may vary on this thing, but it's the same basic principle. You'll want to put your antenna through the nut and pull the little rubber piece out, and you can see right here there's a little brass piece on the inside of the antenna that needs to contact this little brass piece on the actual antenna fitting. So you just tighten it down like so. Make sure not to cross thread. It's gonna be a bad day if you cross thread that thing. You'll need a whole nother antenna nut, and they only come with the antennas. So you want to get that thing down there tight, and then reef down on that. It's also got some flats for a crescent wrench or some sort of adjustable wrench to be able to tighten that down. Once that's all tight and you've run your cable through your firewall into the passenger compartment and where you're going to locate your radio, then you can trim up the excess. If you want to save some excess just in case, you can always coil it up like so, and tuck it up underneath the dash somewhere, just in case you want to reuse that and install it somewhere else where you might need some more cable, or in a different rig that might need more. So here's the install part on the PL259 connector. So I'm going to be using this crimping tool which is going to be included in the order with the radios. I have this little wire crimper. Well, it's not even a crimper, it's just a cutter. You can get these at Harbor Freight for fairly cheap. I like this style because the wire cutter locations are well marked, and it's got a larger one for 10-12 wire that allows you to get on here and cut through the outer insulation, the shielding wire, and get into the inner insulation without nicking that inner conductor, which is really important on these things. First thing you want to do is get your connector out. This is exactly how it'll come in the package. And you can see here kind of how much of the inner conductor you're going to need exposed. There's a tip here, and then there's the end of the fitting here, and you can just kind of hold your wire up to that and gauge how much you'll need to strip off initially to expose your inner conductor. But before you do anything like that, I always forget this part. I take this ferrule and put it over the RG58 cable before you start stripping, because it's once you get your inner shielding wire exposed, it's a real pain to get these ferrules over the end of that braided shielding wire. So again, just take and gauge your distance, gauge the amount of wire you need exposed by looking at the side of this fitting from the tip to the bottom of the thick part of the fitting, which is probably about maybe 1.25 inches. So then I'll take my wire strippers and go to the 10/12 size wire stripper location and just give it a pinch, turn it 180, make sure you're centered on that guy, and give it another one. The other thing that you can do is take your wire cutters and just make sure you're all the way through that the inner shielding braid, and then you should be able to pull the braided shielding and the outer insulator off. That just leaves your inner insulator. Now you still need to remove this part, but save it because it's useful later. I will then take the cutters once more and kind of, like I say, kind of score around it until you get that copper exposed. But you got to be very careful not to nick that copper or cut it or make it weaker in any way, and then it just pops right off. So then what I like to do is this inner insulator is going to go into this end of the PL259 connector, this little sleeve right here at the bottom of it. So you can figure out how much of that you need exposed by pushing this thing in and then just grabbing it here with your fingers, pulling it back out, and you can see that is about strip away from the inner insulation and the braided shielding wire. So you just hold this guy up there like so, and that's about how much you need to strip back from the outer insulation only. So the trick with that is to take your wire cutters and just lightly score it. There's a sheath of braided wire just underneath that, and you just barely want to nick it, and then you can flex the insulation and it will actually separate, and then you're able to pull it free just like that. Now more of that inner insulator is going to go into that fitting than you need outer shielding wire. So I like to just kind of peel it back just a little bit, and you can use the cutters on your wire cutters or wire strippers, or you can use something like side cutters to trim just about 1/4 inch off of that inner shielding wire, so that it's not hanging out from your PL259 connector once you've installed your ferrule. All right, so I give that about, like I say, about maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch and I peel this back because the bottom part of your fitting is going to slide over the top of the isolator, but inside of this shielding wire. So you got to get your solid copper wire all the way through there, and then push your fitting down over top of your inner insulator, but like I said, outside this braided shielding wire. And push it all the way down. And then you can just kind of push that shielding wire back around the bottom part of that fitting, and then slide your ferrule up over that shielding wire. Okay, and you can see there's a little bit of shielding wire hanging out, but it's not critical. I just don't like it hanging way out, looking like a sloppy installation. So the next couple of steps are kind of interchangeable. You can do either one first. On the last video, I showed you to crimp this big ferrule first, but you can also, if you want to lock everything in, the tip needs to be crimped as well. This is going to provide good conduction from the inner conductor wire to the actual radio itself. So, on your crimper that is being sent with your order, I don't know if I mentioned that already or not, there are several different sizes here. The very smallest one is 007. That's easy to remember. The 007 crimp die is only good on like one side. The other side's kind of a recess. You want to stay away from that side. You want to use the side that says 007. So, ratcheting crimper, you want to set your tip inside there and just give it a quick crimp. And that one's pretty easy. And as you can see, you know, it pinches down on this inner copper wire, but not too bad. You want to make sure that doesn't crack or break. One thing I have done is included some extra of these PL259 fittings in case something goes wrong and you have to redo it. So then you will trim your excess copper wire off, and that part of the installation is done. So now we're on to the big ferrule on the actual outer part of the wire, and this one's pretty important that you follow these instructions all the way through here. So the 0.211 size die is the one you want to use, and it's going to be a little harder to smash this sucker down with that one, but you want to go all the way up to the end of the bottom of the fitting and give her a good crimp. And you can see the bottom maybe quarter inch of this ferrule did not crimp. I like to go back and set that in the die and crimp that one as well. And what that'll do is that'll actually crimp down on your outer insulation and really make this a solid connection, so you're not going to pull this wire loose on accident when you're adjusting the radio or doing anything else on the install. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Ray Electric Radios is more than happy to provide you with any technical support you might need.